caffeine. We're almost done. We're on our way. Last stretch. All right. So you kick us off. I've gotten to know my friend Siobhan here over the last couple weeks, and I wanted to start off by asking you to talk a little bit about your twisty career path, because I think it frames a lot of the thinking that's gone into your work.
Yeah, okay, so this term I've heard recently, I call it squiggly careers. So I've had what's called a squiggly career. So when you're in the classroom and you're telling your students that there's no such thing as a linear career, I'm probably a good example of this. So how I got into education goes back a number of years. I qualified initially as a biochemist from UCD, and then I did a master's in environmental science. I ended up working in the Guinness Brewery in Dublin as a brewery shift manager, ultimately making my way up. So I was there for probably over 10 years. Had 3 kids in quick succession. They're now 17, 18 and 19. And had the opportunity to go to Africa with my husband, who also worked in Guinness. So we lived in Ghana and Uganda for over 5 years. Took the redundancy package from Guinness, so I was full-time mom. Came back to Ireland in 2014 with 3 young kids, so I was a full-time mom for a long time. But got interested in education through one of my kids, because we knew quite early on that there was something going on. Turned out that he got diagnosed with autism, so I spent a lot of my time advocating for him in education. He's now 18 and he's doing his leaving cert, so we got him that far. I always said if I kept him alive until he was 18, I'd done a good job. Anyway.
Have you upped that to like 30 now?
Well, yeah, I know. I realise now that he's 18 that I still have to look after him. He's still a big kid. But through him, I got really interested in education. So I went back and retrained as a teacher in Hibernia, actually. So I went back to Hibernia in 2019, retrained as a teacher, worked as a teacher actually full-time all that time. And of course, 2019, 2020, lockdown, online teaching. But I was very lucky with the education I got through Hibernia. We were very used to using education technology tools, etc. So actually, even though I was a PME student, I was actually helping teachers in the school that had not used a lot of technology, and I was giving them advice on good technology you could use for online learning. But it was through that I kind of got frustrated. I did qualify in 2021, but I actually very quickly left teaching and decided that through the learnings that I had from industry and I suppose life as well, that I felt I could help teachers more. What I mean by there was I got frustrated with some education technology tools because there was a couple of things about them. They were either not culturally appropriate, I found, because a lot of them came from the US. And as well as that, they weren't curriculum aligned. So I felt that there was a lot of work that I could do there, and I felt like say for instance, like to use in assessments, to use a Google form was very frustrating because if the student used a capital letter or there was a spelling mistake, it was immediately wrong. So you weren't actually gaining anything. So I felt that AI could help there. And decided that moving outside the classroom and doing something about it, I could.
And I think that's interesting because it's rare to find someone in the educational technology space who can speak to an engineer, speak to the academic researchers, and has any kind of understanding of what's happening in the classroom. So people like you, Siobhan, are really rare. As we get started, I want to move on to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the AI space. And one of the things you and I talked about is the popularity of AI tutors. And I know just from my perspective, I find them terrifying. I think of a traditional school. There's a library and there's a classroom. The library is critically important. This is where you go to supplement gaps in your knowledge, to explore your own interests, but it is not the primary locus of learning. There are very few people who can just read a bookcase full of books and be ready for the next year of school. The locus of learning is the classroom. And what I worry about, and I wonder if I'm the only one, is as we start to see AI tutors replace teachers and being suggested as a replacement for teachers. I thought I'd invite you to react to that.
Yeah, it's also a concern for me as well, because an AI bot is effectively an AI prediction machine. And it's very important that we don't I'm going to try and say this word, anthropomorphize AI bots, okay? There's a big difference between a human tutor and an AI tutor. And especially a teacher. I mean, human can understand nuances, can understand context, has experience with the students in front of them, they have relationships with them, they get to know them. An AI bot will never be able to walk into a classroom, and I'm sure a lot of the teachers here will understand, and just know by the mood of the classroom exactly how this class is going to progress, just from that few seconds. That is not something an AI bot will ever be able to do. So it's concerning that they can be seen as a replacement for students. And then there's also the concerns about students having relationships with the AI bot, right. and relying on them, because a human will always remember the history, and will always remember the relationship that you've had with
right.
your students. But when a bot gets upgraded, or for some reason all of the history is wiped out, the student then kind of is left potentially disconcerted. They've lost their tutor that they thought knew everything about them. But that will never happen for a human.
Yeah.
And just to point out, in our technology, we do not use bots. We are chatbots.
Yeah. I think that I'm worried, sitting in the US context where we're slashing funding for schools right now, that we could easily find ourselves in a place with a peculiar kind of digital divide where we're forced to accept AI as a teacher because it's better than nothing. Whereas more affluent and privileged classrooms will have teachers and look and feel like our classrooms today. And so, that said, to sort of pivot the conversation, maybe especially after the last conversation, to more positive things, where we can go in a way that can really sort of transform learning, and I think about what's missing, and what can we. No, I'm going to jump to the next question. So this notion of teacher augmentation versus teacher replacement. And I kind of wanted to get you to start and talk a little bit about how you're approaching this with Diotima and thinking about that model.
Yeah, so what we're doing essentially with Diotima is we're creating an AI-enabled platform that helps teachers create more assessments and give more feedback without adding any cognitive load to the teacher. To create this, it's not just me. We have a really big team. I see quite a lot of them here. We've married the School of Education in Trinity College with our PI and David, with the School of Computer Science with our PI, Carl Vogel. We got funding from Enterprise Ireland to do this through Learnovate with Tom Pollock, commercial manager within Learnovate, helped us get funding. On the team to make this work, we have 2 AI postdoctorate experts in AI. We have a front-end developer. We have UI, UX. We have tech lead. We have a project manager. So I can see them all there: Berva, Greg, Ian, Massa, Long, Daniel. You know, all it's not just one person that's come together to create this. This is a team. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I think so. And then I know we did all these careful notes, and now we're just totally off scripts. So it is in fact a fireside chat at this point. The thing that's interesting to me is why you chose to focus on formative assessment.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and I think that I studied history of education. I read Rousseau. I studied Spring Hill in England, and these sort of idyllic visions of education, interdisciplinary, driven by student interests, and the reality of putting that together. It's not that those models aren't effective. There's the research behind it is solid, but the reality of making it happen, the logistics of making it happen, is daunting to say the least. And so I'm kind of curious, the focus on formative assessment. What drove that for you?
Well, I suppose from experience, I felt that from my own experience and from my own education with like Hattie and Williams as well, and their research on formative assessment and how getting that feedback in the moment actually drives deeper learning. As a practitioner, I spent a lot of time writing feedback for assessments for my students. Now, I was lucky because I'm a science teacher, so I had 24 students in each class, whereas language students could have 30 students, or history teachers, English teachers. But even still, I found that I was working Saturdays, Sundays, trying to give that feedback to my students. And I just found it's a huge cognitive load. And I suppose in a sense, I'm a giver, I'm a perfectionist. I want to give that feedback because I want them to learn and to move forward in their learning. And I really felt that this was important to them. So building on the fact that there's really deep research on this has been effective, I felt that leveraging AI to augment the teacher to help them give more feedback without increasing their time. So we're not adding time. And in fact, we hope very much that this tool will reduce the amount of time. Not that they end up getting an extra class. That's not where we're going here. But what it will give teachers, it'll give them their evenings back, is what I hope. It will give them their weekends back, and that it'll make for a happier teacher, ultimately, which it's a bit like the oxygen mask analogy. If the teacher is enjoying their work, enjoying their job, and not feeling overwhelmed, then that will translate into for the benefit of their students.
I think one of the Phil Darrow, who is one of my closest collaborators and one of the 3 authors of the Common Core Math Standards, talks about assessment as, if you can teach a kid the expectations by which they're being measured, they're more accurate than any standardized instrument in evaluating their own progress. And that's our goal, right? And so constantly revisiting a rubric is a way of structuring that understanding. And so I think the formative tools in the work that I had done in a previous life, looking at student writing, we found it was incredibly powerful because invariably a student would get a hold of the help email and send a note saying, hey, this thing gave me a 2. That's not cool. It should have given me a 3. We're like, right on, kid. why don't you write that up and send it to your teacher? This is formative. This isn't in the grade book. So, and it was really, but that's the kind of thinking that you want the kid to engage in, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of curious about, how to sort of pick up on that in the Diotima context of like understanding what good looks like, because you're rubric driven, right?
Yeah. So we've designed this as we've put a lot of effort into the user experience in this, and within our tool, the students' answers are compared to a rubric for that answer. Okay, so when the student, as they're using our tool and answering the questions that the teachers have assigned, they can, before they finally submit it to their teacher, they can look at how their answer is comparing to the rubric. Now we put them in a bucket according to the rubric, or the AI will, but it doesn't unlock the upper levels. So they can see where they are, and it will guide them to how they've done and how they can improve.
Yeah.
But we're not unlocking the other levels so that it gives them an easy out. They can see what the ideal answer is. Okay? So this is where we're making them have this cognitive challenge. So it's kind of the reverse to the cognitive offloading, I think was the term used earlier.
Yeah.
So we're making them, have a think again here.
Right.
And then ultimately when they're happy with their answer, then it gets sent to the teacher, and that's where the human in the loop comes in. So the teacher then will give the final sign off on the feedback that our AI has created for them. Again, they don't have to write the full feedback. The AI will give them the feedback, but they can edit it according to their own way of doing things, but they actually have a scaffold for themselves.
One of the things that we had observed, the tool that we were using predates the LLM. Students would, they could just press check and they'd get some feedback on what they had done. And they were pressing check 42 times before they hit submit. And so they would write a sentence and hit check, and write a word and hit check. And eventually, for those of you old enough to remember the movie War Games, like the Whopper, it figured out that was pointless. And the students started calming down, and 6 or 7 times. So what the teacher was reading was effectively a 6th or 7th draft of the student work. And as the student got more sophisticated in evaluating their own work, and then we would mix that in with, doing some peer review, which really worked out. So I think that'll be interesting. There's a related part here about teachers and teachers understanding. What does good look like? What's a 3? What's a 4? You, as a first-year teacher, don't walk in the room knowing when someone is actually doing their best work and getting them to that place. So these simple little assessments, even for veteran teachers, and I used to hear this a lot from veterans, that they realized they were a little too hard on their kids, or worse, a little too easy on them. The tyranny of low expectations, particularly in classrooms with a lot of disadvantaged kids, when the teachers start to realize, oh, I can push them a little bit harder. That's really important. So I'm kind of curious to get you to react to that, because that was something for me that was really important in thinking about how do we help teachers use these tools to shape practices in their classroom.
Well, we already have a form of that here when it comes to the classroom-based assessments at the junior cert level. We have the SLAR meetings where students or rather the teachers come together to have a judgment meeting, and they look at, they decide on features of quality, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
So they discuss, because they're looking at the rubric, like you say, teachers might have different expectations of what good is or what, so they argue it out. So it's actually a really good exercise. It can become quite heated, actually. You'd be surprised, and it comes down to, teachers' expectations. But it's a great way of, making the thing fair, because you can argue the point and then someone else would have an input. But you were suggesting that AI could have a way of helping here as well.
In the U.S., we call them the AP exams, right? These are the college level exams. And what they do to score those exams is they'll lock teachers in a horrific, like they'll go somewhere really hot in the summer, so no one wants to leave. It's the only way you're going to get air conditioning is you stay in that room. And the first day, they all grade one question for a week. And the first day, you just sit at a table and you argue with your table over how you're going to score it. And I was shocked to learn when I started recruiting these people to write a curriculum with me, they all described that as the best professional learning experience they've had. And the time and the ability to have those kinds of conversations is really, really powerful. And so it dawned on me how few opportunities we have for teachers to talk about what the kids are doing. And so I don't think an AI alone is any better for teachers than it is for kids. But I think that combined, and then, we in our work, we would focus a lot on an online community where then people would kind of hash it out. And I think the work we saw from Learnovate this morning on communities of practice, I think is really powerful, because we need to end teacher isolation, but create as many data points, and the AI can generate a lot of data points.
I think that's really important as well for newly qualified teachers. I mean, technically, I was a newly qualified teacher at 45 years of age. I genuinely have to say, it was the most cognitively challenging job that I have ever undertook. I mean, as a newly qualified teacher, you are constantly planning. You're trying to work out new strategies for kids that might be struggling in front of you. So to have that community, I think that community of practices would be extremely powerful,
And I think that to pivot this to the, Sean, we have 5 minutes, is that right? Yeah. So I was worried Louise was going to be right here with a giant sign saying, shut up. But all too often in the development of technology, I've done a stint in the tech sector. I did a sentence at the Pearson Correctional Facility, and I've spent the last 15 years in nonprofits doing curriculum development. And when the technologists, be afraid of anyone who quotes Henry Ford, who once said, if I asked the people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. Because it's code for customers are idiots, and if teachers would just listen to me, I could improve schools. And I worry that's why we're seeing so many AI tutors.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because when I started out on this journey, I actually did a course in UCL in Educate Ventures, and the program was run by Rose Lucken, who has been working in education and AI for a long time, and they actually developed this course specifically for technologists to learn about education. I was the outlier because I was a teacher on this course, but it was really interesting that she had seen that not so long ago, we're talking 22, but this course has been running for many years, because she could see that was a problem. But as I outlined to you, I'm the teacher in this, I'm the learning lead, but what we've done is we've created around Diotima a really, really diverse team. So we have all that expertise from Learnovate. We have the expertise from our PIs. We have the expertise from our postdocs, and we have expertise from commercial leads as well. We have all of that coming together. So I think somebody said earlier on today that AI makes it easy for someone to go into a room and just design an education technology tool. It's really important that you've got a diverse group of people there to make sure that it's right.
I think that's 100% right, and I was absolutely salivating over the program that Peter was explaining in the European countries, because we do not have that in the United States. So as we come towards the end of our time, what's one thing that we can advise people to go and try in their classrooms on Monday? Or, well, I don't know how many people here are actually classroom teachers? All right, well, so we're talking to these two folks. So,
well, I'm guessing if they're here, they're probably well expert on what to do. But I think I always found that getting your students to actually teach each other, explain the new topic, the new concept to each other in pairs.
Right.
And then learn from it, give each other feedback. So that's almost like what we're doing here with Diotima.
Yeah.
But they're getting the feedback from their peer, and this doesn't need AI. And of course, as they say, the best way to learn is to teach.
The Phil Darrow, the person I mentioned earlier, had another really great quote, because we were working on mathematics for the last couple of years. The right answer is boring. Mistakes are interesting. And that was a really powerful statement, because it took us down a really long rabbit hole about, like we would suggest to teachers, interrupt the kids before they could finish their work, and then start looking for mistakes, and then start compiling a list of mistakes, so that the class would know what are the mistakes that people often make associated with this problem. Have them name their favorite mistake. And the most popular talk that we would give when I was working in history is we would post student writing on the wall, and we would have everyone go around with the rubric and put little yellow sticky notes on the wall, giving it a score based on one row of the rubric. And then we'd tear off the bottom of the sheet, and we'd have it look at what the AI did, what the LLM did, or sorry, it was natural language processing at that point. And boy, oh boy, they would get mad at that robot. They were really angry at it. But it was a super productive kinds of conversation, so that you can create, I think, really looking for these opportunities to use an AI to fuel organic and human debates is really important, so that the AI can be both in the classroom and be the library at the same time. I think we're 1 minute over.
Oh, I think we did well.
Siobhan, it's been fun. I enjoyed planning all of this with you, and so thank you all very much.